This week, you'll hear a divorce story like all too many before it. Of course, we'll cover the lying, the cheating, the betrayal, the normal stuff for this show. But I'm warning you, be prepared for the craziest twist of all time, along with the most unlikely alliance imaginable. Welcome to My Crazy Divorce.
I'm a failure as a husband. I'm a failure as a man.
It's just, I'm beautiful and I'm bright and I deserve better.
It's a great day, I'm feeling good. Oh, the possibilities of what I could, do with the world at my fingertips. My imagination brings a smile up to my lips. Oh.
Welcome to My Crazy Divorce, everyone. I'm your host, Tom Milligan. Like most of the shows we do, this week's show includes lying, cheating, betrayal, you name it. But I've never seen gaslighting like this, or at least not from this perspective. But before I introduce our guest, Linda, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, OurDivorce.com. If you're considering divorce, visit OurDivorce.com instead of contacting an attorney. Their simple 3-step process is specially designed to help amicably divorcing couples through the divorce process. And as always, OurDivorce.com doesn't cost you a dime until you're ready to pay. So there's no risk to give it a try. As always, if you need legal advice, please contact a licensed attorney. And just so we're clear, I'm not one of them. I'm also not a therapist, so please don't take anything said on this podcast as legal or therapeutic advice. And the last thing before I introduce our guest, if you'd like to share your crazy story on our show, please visit mycrazydivorce.com and apply to be a guest. I would love to hear from you. Now, with all that out of the way, let's meet Linda. Linda, thank you so much for being on My Crazy Divorce.
Thank you for having me. Pleased to be here.
I'm excited to hear this story. Okay, so let's get started like we always do with your childhood. Tell us about your childhood. Where did you grow up? Tell us about your parents, that whole thing.
I am Canadian. I was born in Canada, raised in Canada, lived there till I was 33. Born in a small city, and then lived in an even smaller town, which is best known because it's adjacent to one of the largest nuclear power plants in the world, which is why I glow. I have 2 sisters and a brother, and my father's passed, but my parents divorced when I was about 12. Yeah, so that's where I grew up. That's where I'm from, and I've been in the U.S. for 19 years now.
Oh, okay. So let's talk. We always like to learn a little bit about your family. So were you close as a family, or was it just not so much?
Well, I mean, it was a dysfunctional family. My father was an alcoholic. He learned at the feet of the master. It was a perpetuation of cycles repeating themselves. But I was very close to my siblings and still am. My mom did an amazing job trying to make bricks out of straw in that marriage. Really strong woman. Continued to do that when she became a single mom. But when the family unit was together, there was a lot of turmoil. My mom used to describe my dad as so unpredictable that he was predictable, is how she used to put it. So that can create a lot of trauma within a family.
Sure. What about religion?
Well, for many years, I identified as a recovering Pentecostal. I was raised in a particular Pentecostal church. I don't want to paint all Pentecostal churches with the same brush, of course, that would be silly. But the one I was raised in they like to scare you into heaven. So we attended that as a family for quite a long time. And I rejected faith entirely. As soon as my mother allowed me to stop going, when I was about 12 or 13, I simply started acting out in Sunday school and saying things like, I don't think we're supposed to take that literally. And finally, I think maybe the Sunday school teachers told my mother I was a bit disruptive, and suddenly I didn't have to go anymore. So
Wow.
I stayed away from faith for many, many years because of that experience in that church. Yeah.
It played a role in your upbringing, at least.
It really did. My mom was a very devout Christian, still is. And my father went through phases. Saved, not saved, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I thought once you were saved, I thought that was the whole idea of Christianity, isn't it?
It depends who you ask. It really
That's
does.
true.
So,
Yeah. All right. So Linda, now that we understand, what made you, let's talk about your ex. We're going to call him Ross for today's show. How did you two meet?
Well, actually, he was my professor. at the university I attended. I had dropped out of high school in the 11th grade, spent a few years working in the head office of an insurance company. And it was a good job for someone without much education, but I learned what I didn't like. And literally one night I had a dream that all my friends were graduating from university. And so the next day I decided I would finish my high school credentials, and I started university the next fall and loved it. And I started out as a physical education major and realized that I really sucked at sports that involved balls or objects that had to go into designated locations, which pretty much ruled out many things. And, the idea of teaching that to someone was looking less and less like a good idea. So it so happened in my second year of university, I took a general education course. It was a required course, and it was in an area that I knew nothing about. Professor was amazing, and this was the professor, and the students were amazing. The course changed my life. And by the end of the course, I said to the professor, "Do you think I write well enough to become an English major?" And he said, "You do, and you should get out of physical education and you should go to graduate school and become a professor." And my passion at that point was African American literature. And he said, "And you should become a professor of African American literature." And I said, "Oh, all right then." And that became the goal. So anyway, a year or two later, I was working for him as a research assistant, and we ended up, developing a relationship, and we were together for about 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. He was a really good person, very smart, so smart. And we really had a weird relationship because he was much older than I. But so we had many good years.
How much older? Just out of
He
curiosity.
was 27 years my senior. And I'll tell you something, people either respond to that by saying, "Oh, age doesn't matter." Well, age does matter. Let's not be
It
silly.
does.
But the problems in the relationship that were related to age, honestly, weren't any more significant than, other issues that arise in the course of a relationship. That is a good time of my life for the most part.
I'll tell you, it's an interesting situation because when I first started dating after my divorce 2 or 3 years ago, I've talked about this a lot on TikTok that, you haven't been on the dating scene for 28 years. You don't know. And, dating sites didn't even exist back then. But so I got on these dating sites and all I did was start looking for pretty women. And I didn't care about age, how many kids. I didn't know that I should put filters on it. I ended up going out with this woman she would have been 27 or 28 years younger. And I was bored to tears. She was great to look at, but we had nothing in common. And it just became very clear to me. That was when I said, "Oh, there's a reason that they have the age filter on here."
Mm-hmm.
And so I put the age filter on and stopped dating. I only went out on one date with a insanely much, much younger woman. And, and again, like I said, I'm not everybody and not everyone else is me. So you and Ross spent 20 years together. Did you have kids?
No, he had kids from a previous marriage who were, there were three of them. They were close to my age. Good kids, great kids, interesting kids. Yeah.
And then you guys ended up divorcing.
We did. We split up. He had some ongoing health problems, and which in hindsight, he became very, very reclusive. And in that period, I became much less reclusive, if you will. And our lives were just going in very different kinds of directions. Relative to this story that I have now to tell, it seems very mundane and boring. In fact, he's in assisted living now. I remain his caregiver. I don't care for him on a daily basis, but I take care of his bills and handle any things he needs and things like that. So it's pretty amicable.
Yeah, I was going to say it's hard to think of that happening if it was a very acrimonious split.
I mean, some days I think he's just a grumpy old man, but then I thought that when we were together too. So,
Well, good. Okay, so how long ago did you guys separate?
2012.
Oh, so it's been 10 years. Okay. You and Ross had a very particular and specific hobby together. Why don't you talk about
Yeah, we showed horses, and we bought horses sort of on a whim in Canada before we moved to the US, brought a couple with us. And then when we moved here, I got a much better quality show horse and found a trainer living not too far away, about an hour away, who I started working with in 2005. And so, yeah, so that until I still have a show horse, though she's being leased to someone else for a little while. But yeah, I've been involved in horses since about 1999, and Ross became involved in horses through me, and he participated in some shows, enjoyed it, and then when his health went downhill, he stopped showing.
Okay, and so you guys split up in 2012. You continue with the horse training.
Actually, the trainer, whose name was Arlen, he had been training my horse since 2005.
Oh,
So I'd
okay.
known him for what is that, 7 years at that point in time, and we had become very close, definitely closer than we should have, if I could put
Oh,
it very mildly.
okay. So it sounds to me that we're about to get into something pretty serious and pretty potentially embarrassing, Linda.
Yes, sir.
So I think we need to bring in another guest to bring in another perspective. So, one who's been on our show before. Evie, I think you know Linda from a prior episode. So, everybody right now, if you have not listened to the previous episode called Happily Even After, I'm going to suggest you pause today's show right this minute, go back and listen to that episode, because from this point forward, nothing will make sense unless you've listened to that episode. Okay? And going forward, by the way, Linda, who we've just gotten to know, is who we called number 3 in that episode. And once you've listened to that episode, you'll understand why this is such a big deal for Linda. So, Linda, thank you again for being willing to talk to us today. And Evie, thank you for being here. So, let's pick up the story from there. You built a relationship with Arlen, your horse trainer.
So yeah, we were having an inappropriate relationship, absolutely. I was under the impression that he was, this sounds so cliche, but very misunderstood by his wife. She didn't support his passions, his God-given gifts, and that she was crazy, trying to control his life.
Again, if anybody's confused at this point, Evie is the crazy wife in that sentence. By the way, these two ladies have become very good friends, and they refer to themselves as what? A peculiar alliance?
That's what I call it.
So nothing
well, yeah,
is
this
weird
isn't going
here.
to be Jerry Springer.
Yeah, if that's what you're here for, you're on the wrong show.
Divorce doesn't have to be complicated. Our Divorce.com's 3-step procedure provides a simple and affordable process that you can follow at your own pace. Save thousands by visiting ourdivorce.com today.
Okay, so we're going to go back now to 2006. Linda has this horse trainer. Evie, you're married to this horse trainer. So, Evie, why don't you start the story in 2006?
So in 2006, Arlen and I had been married for 16 years, and we had 3 sons. And at that point in time, they were 5, 6, and 7. And so I thought life was rolling along and things were going great. And I, through a series of events, found out about number 2, that he was having a second affair. And again, my world was turned upside down.
Yeah. So we're not going to talk about number 1 because that was covered in the previous episode. But so now you found out about number 2. And who's number 2? Linda, do you want to describe number 2?
Yeah, number 2 was a horse show person, was not a client of Arlen's. He met her, I met her at a big show in June of 2006. I found out about it when you found out about it, Evie. I think that's when I found out about it, and I thought, oh, well.
And you had already started having your relationship with him at this point.
No. And as far as I knew, he was a good Christian man. Yeah, for that.
But then in 2006, you see him having this affair with your friend.
Someone who became a friend in that time, yeah.
Okay. And you did you look at him and just go, what is going on?
Well, he kind of drew me into it, told me how much they had in common, and talked about the sparks and all that stuff. And so I became an ally of number 2. And I was, pro number 2. I don't know, honestly, in hindsight, I don't know what I was thinking, because it seems like a very strange thing to do, but that's the truth. That I remember that I was the ally. Now I didn't
Right.
know, I hadn't met Evie, so, or if I'd met Evie, it was only once, I think, at that point in time at someone's house.
I had met Linda on one other occasion at a meal at a person's home, and I had learned quite a bit about her, who she was married to, how they got married, etc. So, and I'm a people person, so I like to get all up in everybody's business and stuff. So I knew a little bit about her. When I met her the next time at this horse show, right after the revelation of number 2, I went to Linda because I'm thinking she knows me and my kids, because we were at this meal together, and my kids were the cutest things on the planet. I mean, they were precious, and they're good kids, and they're just lovable. And so I'm thinking, she'll be on my side. And so I went up to her and I said, hey, I know about number 2. I know what's going on. Like, break the ice. Like, let's just get this out in the open. And she said, well, I just want him to be happy. And I was like, oh, and I just walked away, and I knew never go near Linda again, because she's not on my side. She's not on our side. And so
Linda, do you have any idea what you were thinking? Or
I remember saying, I don't know what the right thing is. I thought I said everyone to be happy. And I think at the time I had this idea that if you're not happy in a marriage, then you should just leave it. And I'm a little bit guessing at this point, because I don't know that I have reflected on that particular moment all that much over the years. But I was probably thinking, it's not working, get out.
Yeah.
Far be it from me to, I guess at that point think, maybe you should keep the commitment you have and work on that instead of flying the coop. But whatever, I misguided though that moment was, that's what it was. So
the moment she said that, Tom, the thing is, on this side of me living in this home with him and sitting at lunch every day with our children, because we sat at the table and ate lunch every day for 18 years. And so he was still every day sitting at the table eating lunch with all of us. And I'm thinking, we laugh every day. And I may have said that, like, we laugh every day. We just have the best time and happy. We're so stinking happy. I don't even know anybody happier, like that was.
Because you didn't just eat lunch, you played games, trivia. You had all this stuff you did.
We had a blast. Yeah, we had a blast, and we had every day. We laughed and had a good time every single day. So,
wow.
So I didn't know what she was talking about. We are happy. We so happy. So.
Now we know about the performances that were going on, but then no, we didn't know that.
Right. It's just still wild to me. So number 2 is having this affair with Arlen, starting in 2006, that we know of at least. How long did that affair go on? Do we know?
It ended when Evie found out.
Which was
September, October, something like that.
Of 2006.
Of 2006, yeah.
Okay, so just a few months. But I think the way we set that in the other episode was, well, the damage is done at that point. There's no unringing that bell.
Yeah. So with him and her, I mean, our pastor got involved, and she called our pastor, and it was something.
I remember that now.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's fast forward a few years, because we get to a point then that Arlen has broken up with number 2. He's playing the married man, the good husband, basically. But then something breaks down in 2010, did you say? Or 12?
It was 2010, 2011. And but in between 2006 and then, their youngest son had a bone marrow transplant. They went through a lot. And he stopped horse showing and training for a year, I remember. And he had told me years later he was angry about Evie not really being crazy about him returning to horse showing, and that there had been a lot of tension after that. So, at some point we started having those conversations that you never have with someone else's spouse or with anyone other than your spouse. You don't talk about problems in your relationship with other people, and especially people of the opposite sex, because it sets you up for a kind of connection and intimacy that it just spells affair. It sets you up for that. It's just stupid. It's stupid. Those things should just be off limits, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Yeah.
And by the way, I'm going to stop and say I agree with you 100% because even if it never ends a marriage, even if that emotional affair doesn't ever end a marriage, it's still an emotional affair.
Yeah. And then it's just that, it's a quick leap into bed. Simple as that.
Yeah,
Quickly. Yeah.
it really is.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so eventually that happened, and then I left my husband in 2012, a couple of months before Arlen left Evie. And at that point, I thought my fairy tale was about to happen.
Okay, so this is again right around 2011, 2012 timeframe that you leave your husband, you leave Ross for Arlen.
I left Ross because I wanted to leave Ross, but because I didn't know that he would leave Evie. I didn't.
Oh, okay.
That was not like we didn't have a plan. Like, okay, I'll leave and you leave, and we'll not make it look like there was none of that. I left, and then
So
a
you
few months
hoped
later,
for a soft landing, but it wasn't a sure thing.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because I honestly, I didn't really think he'd leave. I don't think I really had that kind of confidence. But
Well, so that's an interesting. So here we are in summer of 2012. So Linda, why don't you pick up the story right there?
so he had moved his horse training facility to the town where I lived. That was somewhat of a coincidence. He had to leave the other facility; it was no longer available. This one he knew the people who owned it. He'd known them for years. It was available, so there it was. I'm sure that Evie had reservations about that. It was an hour and something from their home, like it was a long drive. Anyway, then he left after leaving the note about it in July. And he at first moved into a small, so on the horse training facility property, there were a number of places to rent for that. This is what the owners did. So there was an apartment in the barn. There was a small little farmhouse. He rented the farmhouse at first. I had already rented another little house on the property. He lived in the farmhouse. Then he rented an apartment in the barn. And then he was over at my place all the time anyway. So he just moved in.
Okay, so let's stop right there. So you lived on this horse property too?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah,
That's news.
Very convenient. But it was
So
great. My horse was there. My lover was there. Like everyone was there,
so Evie, during this time period, remind us of this note. I don't remember that part of the story.
Yeah, so we're cruising along in life. Our kids are 11, 12, and 13 now. And literally, we woke up that morning and had sex. And I asked if Linda was going to be at this new horse show in a couple days. And I took my kiddos to the movies, and I came home, and there was a note in my bathroom. And I thought it was like a love note. I got excited that he would have left me a note. And then when I read it, it was like, I need time to think. Don't call my parents. Don't do this and don't do that. And I did what he asked.
You wanted to know if Linda was going to be at the show because you knew that he was with Linda.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I had known. Well, so there's this odd thing. I mean, he's telling me, no, she's married. See, he hung out on the she's married card forever until even recent days. I mean, when we begin this story here, he said she's married. And so anyway, so on one hand, I want to know the truth, believe the truth. And then on one hand, I want to believe him because when he was with me, he was very present and he was very loving and very kind and very much a dad. And it was great. So I could live this or I could be angry about that. And so I just wanted peace and love and joy and happiness and happily ever after. So I kept doing that.
Yeah. And how to make a daddy stay, if I remember correctly.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so wow, it's just a crazy thing to think about these from the different perspectives. So in the meantime, Linda, Arlen's over here telling Evie there's nothing really going on because she's married, so you don't need anything to worry about. But you're over there, what's your perspective? He's done, right? He's yours.
Yeah, and he told her that he wasn't involved with me because he said this was my decision, it had nothing to do with you, and I liked that idea. So ran with that. Seemed like a good story. And then we were playing house, essentially, is what we were doing. And had my own little fantasy going on. We would have one of the things I liked was we would have these long talks, and he was so self-reflective. And we spent hours and hours, like on road trips to horse shows and things like this, talking about what we had done, what we as individuals had done wrong in our previous relationships, and how we were determined we were going to do this one the right way because, yeah, we couldn't undo that stuff, too much water under the bridge, but we're going to do this the right way. So we talked about that. And I was thinking, oh, aren't we amazing? Look at us, like being self-reflective and critiquing our own behavior in our previous relationships. And we should get like gold medals for, people who are going to go forward in a new direction. And I'm sure I think my mindset was really much like that. I really thought we were doing the right thing. And really, when you do enter a new relationship, it is important to reflect on where you screwed up. Absolutely. But the context was not an appropriate one. So over that summer, there was this one day, and we were sitting on the couch and we were talking about those couples who are married for, 50, 60 years. And I call them the together forever couples. I officiate weddings as a hobby because I love weddings. I love those couples at weddings. I just love their presence at a wedding. And so we were talking about, what is it do you think keeps them together? Like, how did they make it when most people don't? And over the course of this really intense conversation, we decided maybe when, the going gets rough, they turn in instead of out. And so it was like this epiphany moment. And it was like, okay, so we know that this won't always be like this. Someday something will happen. We'll hit a rough road. Little did I know what that would look like. And let's vow here and now to turn in, not out. And at the first sign of trouble, we will go to counseling. And what you don't ever do with a person with the characteristics this man has, because he can pull the wool over a counselor's eyes like that. But we vowed, and we sat on that couch and we vowed, like literally it was a vow, and that meant as much to me as any marriage vow. I was sure we were together forever and we were going to do it right, and it didn't matter what happened because we'd already decided to turn in. And once you decide something, I'm very black and white this way, when I decide something, that's what's going to happen. So just, you're going to keep your marriage together, live happily ever after, that's what will happen. So too, we were going to do it right. We would turn in, not out, and we would live happily ever after, and we would be the forever together couple.
Wow.
Amen. That's how that went in my head. And I just as firmly believed that it was his commitment as well.
So at this point, you guys have made this commitment, this vow, if you will. He's living with you, more or less, if not 100%, but it was a secret from his parents.
Well, he told me his parents wouldn't approve of him being separated from Evie, and that he would have hell to pay for that. They're very traditional, very religious, and he said that would just not go over well. So he wanted to keep that under wraps. He likes to keep secrets.
It's a big one.
Yeah, big one.
Well, besides from that, and she's right, she's 100% right. And in addition to that, he was 100% in their eyes married to me, living with me, coming to all the holidays with me, because here I
he
am.
did, yeah, because they didn't know he'd moved out.
They had no idea. And I'm playing the perfect wife because I want my marriage to work. And he's given me, when he was with me, he was 100% my husband. Now, he was gone half the time, but when he was with me, he was present. He didn't do the pushing away like I've heard people who have affairs, like their wife, then they're done. No, there was not one moment of that. So I was as close to him as before. He just stayed somewhere else at night.
Yeah, it was peculiar. He's an educator. When school started again that fall, he used to leave for school earlier than he had to. I said, why are you leaving for school so early? Well, he told me he had to get to school early so he could spend time doing his devotions. In fact,
I love your laugh, Evie.
He was doing some devotions, but they weren't at school. They were not at school. They were in Evie's house with Evie, right? He was quite devoted.
By the way, educate. What's a devotion? I mean, I know that we're about to joke about it.
It's a little Christian reading you do every day, a little Bible reflection, and it's a Christian thing.
Okay, so he was going to school to do devotions, but in reality, he's going over to Evie's house. You guys are having sex and having breakfast together, sending the boys off to school or whatever.
We
And
homeschooled
then,
it, yes. Mm-hmm.
oh, okay. And then he'd come home to Evie's house for lunch too.
Which I did know. I did know.
Oh, you did know that.
Yeah, and I thought that was like I was glad that he wasn't going to become one of those. Oh, I pick up the kids on Sunday and take them to McDonald's for a Happy Meal and then drop them off at home. Like it was clear he was not going to be in that kind of relationship with the boys. And yeah, I thought that was really good. I thought
Oh,
that was,
interesting.
yeah.
So you
I
get to
didn't
know
know
about the
about the
morning
other kinds of
devotions.
I didn't know about his morning devotions at Evie's house. No, I didn't know that. Let's just say he was a very devout man then.
Yeah.
He had a lot of devotions. Like, can I be crude?
Yes.
That man should not even have a penis because it should have fallen off. That man had so much sex all
Yes.
those years. Like, it is mind-boggling.
Yes, lots. I mean, we had as much as any, more than any married couple, probably. We did not ever not have it.
Yeah.
And we were married, so it wasn't like, I mean, anyway, no. And then come to find out now that we're on this side, the same thing was happening over there. So
I was quite happy in my environment also. I was also doing devotions.
So and how, just out of curiosity, give or take, how old was Arlen at about this time?
He was 43.
Okay, that makes a little more sense.
No, but I think he carried on his devotions all the way up till
He is so devout. Yeah.
up until he was a good 54 before he stopped at least one angle.
As far as we can gather, in all seriousness,
Mm-hmm.
he has always had 2 women.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
He had, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which, again, I joke about this a little bit, but you talked about being a recovering Pentecostal. I'm a recovering Mormon. And so people always joke, how many wives do you have? Now, the Mormons have not practiced polygamy for hundreds of years, or at least a couple of 100 years. So but it's still a funny joke. But it is shocking to me that anyone would want to have more than one. I'd call it a wife, but significant other or whatever. I mean, that's a lot of work. Even if they know each other and are okay with it, like in a true polygamous situation. But when we know part of the reason why that is, and we'll get to that.
Right.
But Linda,
So
what's the story on your side?
I always wondered. And I was like, do they have this weird thing going on? Because but he would always say Linda doesn't exist. And so I thought, do they have this weird thing, maybe that's hers now or something? So I asked her recently, I said, Linda, did it bother you that he wore his wedding ring all the time?
So the answer would have been yes, but I didn't know because it did bother me for a very short period of time. And then one day he came home because he only wore it and I want to say it was that summer, the 2012 summer. Mm-hmm. He came home one day, he said he'd been for lunch with you and the boys. And then y'all had left. And he said he went into a jewelry store. The restaurant was adjacent to a jewelry store, I guess. And he had a swollen knuckle and he had never been able to take the ring off. It just wouldn't come off. He had them cut it off. He told me he was sad when he saw the engraving on the inside. I don't remember what it was. And then later he told me he had given the pieces of the ring to Evie. That was the last time I saw that ring. Not once did he ever forget to take the ring off when he came home. I had no idea that ring even still existed. And when I heard that he had worn it all those years, it blew my mind. Because how could he not? I mean, he would come home late at night. He would stay at Evie's and he would often get home at 12:30 or 1 in the morning from spending an evening at their house. And because he said the boys stayed up really late. So someone stayed up late at the house. I don't know if it was the boys.
No, it really was. It was one truth.
Yeah.
One truth.
Maybe the solo truth. But anyway, so I am amazed. To this moment, I don't know where he kept the ring. I don't, because I would go in the glove box in the car or the truck for this or that. I don't know where it is. I asked him about that after we had that conversation. I said, so tell me about this wedding ring, the one you cut off. And he said, yeah, I remember telling you that. And that was all he said.
So, by the way, there's a little hint that these guys still are somehow in contact, which is still amazing to me. Okay, so let's go back a little bit because we have a bunch of stories that we can talk about. So this is not necessarily going to stay in chronological order for everybody listening because there are just too many things that can spider off of this. But I understand there was a camping trip situation.
Oh, they went to family camps, Arlen and the boys. That was often their summer, one of their trips or vacations or whatever. So the summer of 2012, when he left, he told me, it was in July, he said that Evie wanted, I think the camp was in Michigan, and she wanted him to go with them. And he said he didn't want to go, but he had agreed to go, and she couldn't drive all the way. And I begged him not to go. Oh no, you can't do that. It's not appropriate. It's not appropriate. It's not appropriate. And because my thing was, spend all the time you want, just don't spend the night, because I thought that seems a reasonable boundary. And he agreed until he broke it. But anyway, he then told me that they'd talked after a few days, and that she was going to go to some kind of thing in Colorado. Not to worry, he was going to take the boys to Michigan. All was going to be fine. So as far as I knew, that's what was happening, except that I must have known that wasn't. I mean, he even went so far as to tell me when Evie's plane left for Colorado, and that she was on the plane safely going away to the mountains. But this family camp posted pictures of the campers, and so I stalked them and found pictures of, lo and behold, all of them,
including Evie, who was supposed to be in Colorado.
That woman is amazing, how she can be so many places at once. She's so talented. So, yeah.
So you confronted Arlen, I assume.
Yeah. When he arrived back, like he came back, he had a scruffy beard, like he looked like he'd been camping in the wilderness. I don't know. To this day, it's the only time I'd ever seen him unshaven, I think, like that. It was gross. He was usually very clean shaven. It was very peculiar. But he came back, he was all apologetic. I'm so sorry, I lied. I just thought you'd be so upset, and blah, blah, blah. So I forgave him. Because he was never gonna lie to me again.
Of course. And he's so good at this, the manipulation and everything. He seems like a really good one. I think there's something, we were talking before the show, you refer to it as the big lie.
Yeah, at some point. So there'd been a series of lies I'd caught him in, and they usually involved the boys. It was always when he was going to do something with the boys and Evie, he would come up with some lie to cover it. And I caught him in several of those. Well, finally he confessed to me that, and I believe this to be true, that growing up, he was very good at everything. He was a good athlete, good student, everything he did, everything he touched was gold. And his parents had very strict rules about what you do and do not do. And there was no breaking those rules. So what he learned to do was lie from a fairly young age. Not that he decided not to do the things he wasn't supposed to do. He learned to cover what he'd done by lying. So he was an accomplished liar by the time he was an adult, because he felt he had to live according to this standard of perfection. That is what he felt. So he told me that's why he had told those lies. He didn't want to upset me. He said, I lie to avoid conflict, which I believe. I still believe that. But the big lie was that he said, look, when Evie and I split up, we sat the boys down and we told the boys that we're no longer a couple, but we will always be a family. And so they were committed, he said, to giving the boys a family life. They went to church together as a family. They always went to ball games together. They went to family holidays together, all of these things. And I thought this was the greatest thing I had ever heard in my life. I thought that is how couples should get divorced. That is what I thought. They should be teaching courses on how to get divorced. Like, they are rock stars. Isn't that amazing? What a good dad. They're like, how mature of them. I just thought that was the most amazing thing. I bragged about that until like a year ago, until I found out it was a load of crap. But now they did do all of those things, but it was part of his lying. It wasn't part of a mature decision that they came to together. It was, no, not at all. It was a performance. And so I, that gave him space to always have that family unit doing whatever they want to do. And it meant that for the next decade, I spent every single holiday alone. My family's in another country, and every single holiday he would get up and go wherever they were going for the holiday, which really sucked. But I thought, well, it's best for the kids, because of course I was all, what's the word, moral.
So Evie, you've got your husband, at least for 4 or 5 years of this, he was still your husband, coming over in the mornings at noontime for lunch, and every holiday And I'm assuming a bunch of weekends for the sporting events and everything like that.
Yeah. Not so much on the weekends, but yes. He had himself on a visitation schedule and he was very strict about it, but I didn't know what it was, but he did, and he kept himself. I mean, we didn't get like a little extra hour over here. If we got an extra hour here, then he took an hour from over there. But anyway, but yes, he was dividing his time equally among her and us.
We were sister wives.
But there was no her, right? So he would still say, "There is no Linda's married. No, she's not." And so anyway, that was.
For those not watching this on YouTube, my face, I can't even fathom how one could do this and how two obviously intelligent women allowed it.
Well, here's the thing, and I think this is an appropriate time to introduce this. So what we now know, Evie and I have learned more about this topic than either of us, I think, if I can speak for both of us, wishes we knew. We now know that he told me he has been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. So it's a very serious personality disorder. So there are we use the term narcissist in our society, sort of casually to refer to anyone who's arrogant, whatever. But narcissistic personality disorder, according to the DSM-5, I think, has 9 characteristics. And to be diagnosed with it, you have to demonstrate 5 of them. So he told me himself that he has been diagnosed with this. Well, he is textbook. His behavior now makes total sense in the sense that the characteristics of someone with these traits they're often deep inside, extremely insecure people who have no core sense of self. And therefore, they seek supply that gives them adoration, admiration, attention, anything that gives them a sense of being important. They either grow up in homes that were full of trauma and abuse, or where they were adored and revered and could do no wrong. Certainly fits the pattern. One of those fits the pattern. Many of them, they're so good at performing. They're charismatic. People like them, and everyone likes him. Everyone. He's amazing. Like when you meet him, you think, what a nice guy.
Yeah, and he was like on this side. Like I would say, after the years went on, and he was clearly abusive in some way. I would say he abused me with kindness because, he was nice to me always. I only ever saw the good side of him. Linda saw a little bit of a different side of him.
I saw a lot of he became, after they lost their youngest son, the traits of behavior escalated totally out of control. And he became eventually the total opposite of what he was in public when he was home. But yeah, so we now know that there is a context within which this makes sense. It's not just, he's not just running around. And so often when individuals like this, cheating is very common, and they meet someone, they mirror whatever that person wants. They mimic the traits. They figure out what this person, likes, and then they act like whatever that person desires, and they hold on to that performance for however long. And then eventually they get tired. They discard the person and but they usually have a new supply.
Right.
It's almost untreatable. Something like 3% of people with the disorder will ever have treatment, and it's almost untreatable. The habits are because the life practices work in the service of that person. They work for them. There's no incentive to change.
He doesn't have a need to change. He has enough women for whatever reason. But I think this is a great time to bring in, after Colson passed away, that was my last tie to him, because in these years of this happening, as happy as we were and as much as we did function as a family, which we did, and I will say and add this for context too, after I finally did divorce him, when I realized nothing's changes, I think there's a Linda over there, but anyway, so we finally divorced, and just about the moment we divorced, our third son was diagnosed with cancer. And so instead of me thinking I'm going to now go over here and do a different life, it only put us back into the same kind of life, because my third son loved both of us being together. And so I was not going to upset him anymore or try to prove mom's going to go here, dad's going to go there. No, we functioned 100% as a family, continued to function the same way. So nothing changed after the divorce, except Colson went through treatment and then he passed away. So in the midst of that, I'm thinking I was getting a divorce, I was going to move on, but now this. And so anyway, I say all that to say when Colson left, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, the last tie that we had. And so it turns out that when I broke that tie, he found someone else.
Yeah. So there was a client, horse showing client, her kid showed, and this was the mom. And she was a friend of mine, and she was all about him for a long time. But they ended up having an affair that lasted quite a while. And actually, her husband sang at Colson's funeral. I did attend the funeral with some friends, sat at the back, felt I should be there for him, knew I probably wasn't welcome.
I'm glad. Only my oldest son saw her, but it wouldn't have been pretty.
I saw him when he saw me. Yeah, to his credit, he just looked away.
So he didn't even know you were going to be there.
Oh no, he
she
knew.
wouldn't have been allowed to be
Arlen
there.
knew I was going. He came. I sat at the back with my friends who were, mutual friends, and he came and gave me a hug, thanked us for coming, whatever. But it was a very painful experience because that's, he was my partner, right? And when your partner's going through that, sorry, I just remember watching them walk out of the church when they took the coffin out, and there was just so much pain. And I just wanted to be able to put my arm around him, and I couldn't because I didn't exist. And I was so glad he had Evie because I knew, sorry.
That's okay.
I knew that she was the only person on the planet who could understand what he was feeling. Like no one else but Colson's parent. No one knows what that's like. And I was glad that they were friends. I mean, I didn't know there was more. I didn't know how much more there was. I didn't know they were sleeping together all those years. I just knew they were friends.
We did have a really good relationship, Tom. And to put in here, the reason it was so important for me to have this relationship of what she's telling, she watched it from the sidelines. And I did appreciate how she handled over there. I did. I always did, even in the midst of it when she didn't exist. I still appreciated her. I knew what she wasn't doing. She wasn't demanding him not to be with his kids and all that. So, but at the service, he spoke so highly of me, I got a standing ovation.
That's just, I am completely baffled, seriously, that I've just never seen anything like this. Evie, you're sitting there saying how much you appreciated the woman that was sleeping with your husband while she was sleeping with him. I have met literally hundreds through my work, hundreds of women and men whose spouses have cheated. And I have never once heard anyone say, I really appreciated what they didn't do. I mean, that is huge. That's monumental.
Divorce doesn't have to be complicated. Our Divorce.com's 3-step procedure provides a simple and affordable process that you can follow at your own pace. Save thousands by visiting ourdivorce.com today.
Let's go back a little bit. I want to hear one more story. Evie, I want to hear the hot springs story.
Well, from my perspective, we were married. So ultimately, to set things into perspective here, we were married 26 years.
Okay.
From the day we married till the day we divorced, we were married 26 years. So on our 25th anniversary, even though he lived somewhere else, he moved out in 2012. On our 25th anniversary, he took me on a surprise trip. Now, mind you, it was just for the day. But he came and picked me up, and we went to, ultimately, he took me to Hot Springs, and we went on the Belle of Hot Springs. Now, I knew even at the time that he was probably doing it more for show, even though we had a really good relationship. I mean, celebrating an anniversary while he lived somewhere else was a little bit off, but anyway, that's what we did. So it wasn't until recently when I was telling Linda, when we went on to Hot Springs on our anniversary trip, that I found out the other side of that.
Yeah. So the other side of that was that starting in, it was either 2012, 2013, we'd gone on it's a dinner cruise. And we'd
Okay.
gone on it, sort of on a whim. Well, we had the best time. So that became our thing. We did it a couple of times a year, and it was our thing. It was our favorite thing to do. It was our special place. And when I found out that he had taken Evie to our special place on our special boat, on our boat, and had dinner on our boat, and by God, if you sat in our booth, I would be so pissed off. But oh, I just thought, I said, because I told him, I said, I just found out what you did. How could you do that on our boat? And he's like,
He's dead.
And so you guys so that was what, 2015. Linda, you'd been living with Arlen at this point for
3 years.
3 years?
Yeah. For the most part, I was really happy. We did our horse thing. We got along well. It felt really good. He was hot.
By the way, I do need to say we've had that part of this conversation about whether or not, because I asked you guys, is he just like this overly attractive man? And Linda, you said, oh yeah, he was hot. And I remember, Evie, in your first episode, I believe you said you're ugly and your mama dresses you funny.
Yeah. When I very first saw him, that was my first impression.
So, there you go. Everybody has a different taste, right?
But he was, after that, he was handsome, but not to the extreme. He's not this person that can get all these women to do what he got us to do. It's just,
right.
That's bizarre. The bizarre. Now, he's good looking, no doubt, but
a little less so now. Good.
Okay.
But this kind of living a double life takes a toll. Seriously.
Yeah.
Like you can see the effects of it. You really can.
He lived, a double life for sure.
Yeah, I remember I saw a before and after picture of U.S. presidents at one point.
Yeah.
Those 4 years or 8 years, those men so far, someday a woman is going to age just as bad, but these men age like 40 years during those 4 to 8 years. Mm-hmm. And I can only imagine that Arlen, he's been doing this for a long time. And again, I don't care how intelligent he is. I don't care how narcissistic he is. The fact is that still has to be difficult.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's when he did leave in 2012, if we could dredge up some pictures, he had a marked weight gain and quite a different look even at that time. But then he leveled out. But yes, he has aged. But can you imagine living a double life and then a triple life when he brought this other person in? And then as soon as that girl broke up with him, we were kind of there. But when she broke up with him, he cried on Linda's shoulder.
Oh my gosh, he did. But here's the craziest thing you may hear. So he became very skilled at gaslighting. And so gaslighting is the term used to describe when someone lies to you in ways that is intended to make you doubt your reality. And he was a master. He became a master. So the most extreme example is after I busted him, I suspected the relationship with this friend for a while. And then on his birthday, interestingly, I busted him for 2 affairs on his birthday, back-to-back years. Affair number 1 on Evie was also on his birthday. He has something about doing these or getting caught on his birthday. Don't ask me what that's about. But anyway, so I busted them for sure at a horse show, and it was a scene, for the record, worthy of General Hospital. Threw the drink at him, you'll never ride my horse again, you whatever. It was awful. Then we returned from the horse show. Her husband would not let her be in the home when he was there, so she had to go stay at a hotel. And the day after we got back, he had gone to have his birthday dinner with his parents, and he was very late getting home. And so I was texting, like, where are you? I'm with my parents. And I said, send me a picture. Well, he sent me a picture to prove where he was that he had already sent me. He keeps a collection of photos of places he is so he can prove where he is when he isn't, essentially. And he continued to do this with the most recent supply. So anyway, I had a hunch that I knew because I was talking to this woman's husband, who was, of course, devastated. They had 2 little kids. And I knew she was in town at a hotel. I just knew that's where he was. So I drove to town because I needed to prove to myself, I guess, what I already knew. Sure enough, his truck was in the parking lot. So I stood beside his truck, texted him, and said, I am standing beside your truck. I know you're at the hotel. I know you're with her. He called me immediately, and he said, I am not. It's not my truck. I am 30 miles away. I'm driving home. That is not my truck. And I thought, pretty sure it's his truck. I knew it was his truck. I knew it was a truck. It's like it's a 1 ton dually Dengali. Like, I mean, it wasn't very old, had his Cowboys thing on the back. I mean, like, I knew the truck.
Mm-hmm.
But in the moment, I was thinking, oh my God, I falsely accused him.
Oh,
And
wow.
I apologized for falsely accused. I should have keyed the truck, is what I should have done.
Right.
So I drive home. Sure enough, he shows up an appropriate amount of time for the 30 miles away that he said he was later. And I don't know if he ever, he didn't not admit to it, but, it was obvious. I mean, I knew it was his truck. So he did that kind of stuff all the time, to the point that she finally went home, like just within a couple of weeks. And he bawled on my shoulder. Why would she do this to me? Why would she break up? And because I wanted him to stay, because, remember, we were going to be together forever. And I had kept saying to him, why did you turn out? You were supposed to turn in. So I let him cry on my shoulder. He
What
stayed.
year was that?
That was 2019. But right before that had been the weekend before that had been Easter, and on the Saturday, my beloved show horse, who was 26, I'd had to put her down.
Oh,
He
That would
stayed
have been
around.
also Colson's birthday then.
Yes, it was. It was, and so I put the horse down that day. He was like super partner, even though he was having this affair at that point. Got in the hole with her, arranged her body the way I wanted it, like everything was perfect. Then we went in the house. He said he was going to spend the Saturday night before Easter Sunday at his parents'. I didn't think he was, because I knew what's her name didn't have access to her house that weekend. And got showered, dressed for his date in the shirt I'd given him for his birthday, which was my favorite. And off he went on the date. So I spent the night like a crazy woman, texting him, "You shouldn't be with her." And then he kept telling me I was crazy. And by the next morning, I was so convinced that I was crazy. I thought, I can no longer tell what is real from what is fiction. I went to the ER and I said, I think I'm crazy. I can't tell truth from reality.
really?
I was so insane by that point, because his lies were constant, and the constant telling me, what you see is not what's really happening. What you see is not, and it's been going on for months and months and months with this particular woman. It really was bad with her. Well, later that summer, what was my number two? She became a client, and I knew the moment she walked in the barn, I knew this was a problem. Her husband had left her the previous February, and he was about to have a baby with another woman, and she had been broken, and she was sad, and she knew about this other affair. So I thought, well, maybe it'll be okay, because surely she wouldn't do that to another woman, knowing how painful it is. Surely she wouldn't do that, but she did, and they began an affair. Meanwhile, he and I were having our new beginning. We bought a horse together. That's sort of like having a baby to save the relationship, except, you can sell a horse,
Right.
right? And it's generally frowned upon to sell babies. So,
Generally.
yeah. So, as it happened, he ended up keeping the horse and not paying me for my part of the horse, but that's another story.
Well, you're probably crazy for thinking he owed you anything, right? He's going to try to
Yeah.
convince you that
Oh yeah,
it's
that's
better.
ongoing. Anyway, the next January we moved off the property into a new house, which was supposed to be our new beginning. But of course, by that now in hindsight, of course, that was just to get me off the horse training property, so that this current affair could be there. I busted them, and then the really crazy stuff began. So he stayed for another. So that was in April of 2020 when I found them together at the barn, and I knew it had been going on for a while, but I found them together. Blasted him, called him out, and at that point in time, he must have told her he broke up with me, but he didn't. He stayed. He lived with me for another year, but he got an apartment in a town about halfway between where she lived and where we lived. And he came home every night, unless he was at a horse show, and began dating her openly around the boys, taking her to family events. But I didn't know that. I didn't know he was dating her openly. And then he and I began couples counseling in August or summer of that year.
It's crazy.
No, it is crazy. Then we started couples counseling it was during COVID, so it was video, but really great group of a married couple who do couples counseling. They were fantastic. And they knew something was up with him. And then one night, it was the strangest thing. He came home. He was hostile and mean and drank a lot. And then he started puking his guts out. And he puked for 3 hours nonstop. And it was so weird. This is so gross. No odor, no nothing. He just puked and puked. And then when he stopped puking, it was like he was a changed man. for the next 3 months. And I swear, if you believe in demon possession, then maybe he puked up a demon. I don't know. To this day, I don't know. All I know is he behaved like a completely changed man. He was
Huh.
nice. He was kind. I had to go to Canada during that time. And while I was there, he said, I want to marry you. I want to be with you. We're going to be okay. I can't wait for you to get home. I came home. He had like a nice gift waiting. He was so romantic. Then we went to a big horse show in November. He bought me an engagement ring. And we came back from that horse show in November. And one morning we were sitting looking at, it was early in the morning and we were both awake early. And for some reason we were looking at real estate that morning, like thinking of what properties we might buy. And he went to have a shower. And for some reason I looked on Facebook and found pictures of him and this affair partner at Thanksgiving, which had been the weekend before, at his parents' place.
Wait, so this is Thanksgiving 2020.
Yes.
He had spent Thanksgiving at his parents with his new girlfriend.
And had been taking her to the boys' ball games.
So you knew about, this is number 4 from your podcast.
Yes. Yeah. But one thing right in here that we have to interject that is crucial is in September of 2020, Linda wrote me an apology letter. And it was, and I've described it before as amazing, all encompassing, the most, the best gift a scorned woman could get. It said everything that it needed to say. And I do believe at that same time, or around that time, Arlen had sent a letter to our sons. This was part of their counseling, I think, as they were going through it. So anyway, so the reason that this is important to put here is because this is what started dialogue between Linda and I, even though when she sent that to me, I just said thank you and I went on with my life. Like I really appreciated it. I was thankful for it, but it wasn't at a place where I needed it. Like, you're darn right, you better. And it was like really just more full, like just added to my fullness. But after she sent me that, a few weeks later, she had messaged me to tell me about a business that she has that she thought I would fit well in with some things that I was doing. And so that opened dialogue between us. It's the perfect intro into what was about to happen. It's unbelievable when I look back that she sent that, and then we had this little dialogue between us. And then when she found this out in November, December, I think it was in the first weekend of December, she texted me. It was like a Friday night, and she said, I found out Arlen's having an affair with number 4. And I was like, yeah. I think I said, he's been dating her for a year and a half. What are you talking about? Where have you been? And I'm thinking they broke up a year and a half before, because when she sent me the note, she put the context of a year and a half before, which was when Colson had passed away. And I thought, well, they must have kind of just completely severed the relationship at that point. And that's when he started dating this other one. And so I didn't know what Linda was trying to tell me. She said, he lives with me. I'm like, what? Almost like, say it a little louder, because I can't really hear what you're saying. I don't understand. And she was texting me. I won't go into the details, which could be really funny. We'll have to talk about them another time. But so then she said, yeah, he asked me to marry him 3 weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago, 3 days ago, whatever it was. And I'm like, what? Like, he had kind of just asked me to marry him somewhere in the midst of that too, because things were crazy on his end. He said, if you and I could just get back together, everything will be fine. And I'm like, oh, I don't think so.
So, okay, wait a minute. So we're sitting here at the end of 2020. He's been proposing to you, Evie, basically, let's get back together. Linda, he's proposing to you, buying you a ring. Meanwhile, he's dating number 4 openly with his parents' knowledge.
Who was hounding him to get married, hounding him.
So number 4 is saying, we need to get married. I'm sure he's telling her we're going to get married. I'm sure of it, right? And then in the meantime, he's asking both of you to marry him. And
and it all blew up because all the walls came down, because I messaged his parents and I said, how dare you have this woman at your house? I have lived with him for 9 years. I've never once been invited to your house. Like, does this not seem like a problem to you? We live together now. Well, this was unknown to his parents. they lost their minds. They called him and shamed him with, "You are going to hell. You are a disappointment. You are a terrible person. You are blah, blah." And I mean, they berated him up and down. And then they called me. I too am going to hell
For living together?
for living together. Yes. So then he got on that bandwagon. Then he got on that bandwagon himself. Oh, it's sin. We've been living in sin.
Yeah, he wasn't on the bandwagon. He was just getting hounded by number 4 because she was trying to pull him that way. Here's the other crazy thing that happened in the midst of this is when Linda contacted me and said he's having an affair, and my head is spinning as to where is Linda in all this? What is she even talking about? Because anyway, the next week on Friday night, I began to get text messages on my phone. Now, my children were too, but they weren't with me. And I'm getting text messages on my phone as if they were to me. And it says, your ex is at it again. And I'm like, who? What? And so anyway, number 4 was talking to Arlen about Linda.
And so the text messages, like they were on a family plan, cell phone plan. And somehow they ended up going to the boys and to Evie. So they started seeing all of these messages between Arlen and number 4.
And so when he says, or when number 4 says your ex is at it again, he's referring to Linda as the ex.
He was referring to Linda as being the ex, yes. So I'm just out of it. Like it's time to get my popcorn and put my feet up and watch this show go on and so the amazing part about it, why I said she sent me the letter, which was really kind and very nice, but I had an end to her to say, hey, what are you doing? On this Friday night when these messages are coming to my phone, I'm like, I could ask Linda, what are you doing? And she could tell me what she was doing. And I could see what Arlen was doing. And I knew
I didn't know about them.
No,
I didn't. And you never told me for months and months.
No, we never told her. But here's the thing, in case nobody heard this on the first one, but the very first night these messages started coming into my phone, number 4 is telling Arlen, your ex is at it again, and says to him, I think I'm going to have to get a restraining order. And he says, fuck that bitch, slap a restraining order on her ass. So I text Linda at this moment. I mean, this is real time. This is happening. I say, hey, Linda, what are you doing? She said, I'm waiting on Arlen. He's on his way to pick me up. We're going to eat. So number 4 is basically trying to call the law. Arlen's in between both of them, going to pick her up, telling her to put a restraining order on. And I'm like, wow. I did not know, because honestly, I think he had asked me out that very day, asked me out to go eat. I had no idea he was capable of this.
Oh my gosh.
And that's the first night.
Have you ever seen the movie? I think it's a Denzel Washington movie. I think it's called Man on Fire, where he's like caught. He like accidentally stole some money or something. He's a police chief, and so he has to like cover his bases, and he's like staying ahead of everybody by about 3 seconds throughout this entire movie. That's how I feel that Arlen is here. He's created this situation, but he just keeps adding to it. That's the other thing. It's not just he did one thing that he has to cover for the next year. Every day he seems to be adding more shit to the pile.
Oh, well, yeah. And from day, with her, I mean, Evie has since shown me many of the texts and lies. I mean, she has been lied to ad nauseum, and probably still is. But
I'm sure she is, of course.
That doesn't change. So yeah, it was crazy. But, the reason she wanted to put a restraining order was because I had sent her some messages with choice language saying that she needed to get out of my relationship.
That is nuts.
But here's the thing, for people watching, people need to know this, because his role in it, when she said that, when number 4 said, I want to get a restraining order, it was like, birthday, Christmas time for him, because if she does that, then she can't talk to her. Oh, like this is it. And so I can see as to where a narcissistic person would entice or kind of push a person to get a restraining order, because it exactly plays into their hand and they can keep everybody separate.
Yeah, it's triangulation at its best.
Yeah, like you say, he's an intelligent guy, and I think a lot of narcissists are.
Mhm.
And again, I think Linda, you said it earlier. We don't take that term lightly here. I make fun of people very publicly who call. Basically, I think most people think the definition of narcissist is the same as asshole.
Right.
And if someone has pissed me off, they must be a narcissist. That's not the case. It is a very specific diagnosed, and not very many people have it. And in this case, I think, like you've said, we have one here. Let's fast forward because it's funny, I could say we're running out of time, and I don't mean time on the show. I mean, we're getting almost to real time here. We're talking about 2020, end of 2020, so we're only a year or two back. So I understand. So we're talking about like January or early 2021, right? There's a
Yes.
couple of weekend trips. What's going on there?
We went to northern Arkansas, to a little town I'd wanted to go to. She apparently, according to those texts, because Evie was texting me saying, where are you going? Like, is he driving? And I couldn't figure out why she was asking me that. Well, apparently he was supposed to be at a men's retreat.
He told number 4, he said, oh, the church is having a men's retreat. I'm going to that.
Then we went to a horse show, and he told her that he had COVID. He couldn't see her that weekend, but I posted pictures of the horse show on his Facebook page, and she saw those, and I guess he told her that they were from, a previous show or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, so she
And
found
she
out
knew
about that.
they weren't. But I will say, when he went to that, I have to say this, when he went to that men's retreat, they did do devotionals. He did send devotionals to number 4 to prove that he was at this men's retreat. But I'm sure he was having a few devotionals, right, Linda?
He was devoted. Yeah, quite devout. Yeah.
But here's the thing, Tom. When he would do this, when he went on this men's retreat / romantic weekend with Linda and to the horse show, Lori,
Number 4.
Number 4, her remedy, her answer, her solution was, let's get married.
Right, because that'll fix everything.
Because
Every time she caught him in a lie, you said that's what her response was, let's get married.
Let's get married.
And the
one thing he said one time, I thought, this is the most intelligent thing this man has ever said. He said, I just don't think that getting engaged and married right now, after we're kind of having these problems, is the very best thing. And I thought, man, finally.
Yeah.
He's ever going to go do it that day, right?
Oh, yeah, she had him. I mean, she would say, let's go to the jewelry store. They close at 5. Can you be here by 5? We got to get there before 5. I mean, she had the pressure on.
And then Valentine's Day, which is my very favorite holiday.
It's mine too, by the way.
And
mine is my favorite because that is the day the judge signed my divorce decree in 2020.
I have more romantic reasons. That's always been my favorite holiday. But it was a really bad. Other than those trips, it was a horrible few months. He would come home at night and he was mean. He would come in and he would, if I opened my mouth, I mean, there was screaming every night and some physical violence, that was not his MO prior to that. It was.
And Linda did end up in the hospital a few times.
I wasn't eating.
He would drive her to the hospital, and then he would go be with number 4. And one time he went to the courthouse with number 4 to get this restraining letter. And
it was just a cease and desist letter,
And then he went back and picked Linda up from the hospital.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to say this, and I hope no one isolates this particular audio because it makes me sound really bad, but you got to have like some grudging respect for someone that can juggle that many balls and keep them straight. I mean, if that guy could take that brain power and put it to something positive, he'd probably cure cancer. Mm-hmm. That's just insane to me. I literally don't understand. Okay, so Linda, you say that he got physically violent. Evie, you never saw that in your entire time with him. Evie, you'd been with him for 9 or 10 years at this point. It had never come up, but clearly the pressure's getting to him, it sounds like to me. And so he kind of blew up. And when you say physical violence or abuse or whatever, was it just screaming or did he?
There's pushing, some kicking, hitting.
Fighting.
Biting.
Biting.
Yeah.
He bit you?
Yeah. One time he had like he went to, I thought he was going to hit me and I grabbed his shirt. So I held him, like grabbed his shirt and I wouldn't let go because I thought he was this close. And I thought that if I let go, then he would be able to hit me, right? Like if he could get far enough away, then you can hit. And so I was holding on and he bit me on my hand and I had like it broke the skin. It was like
Again,
it was just so ugly. It was so ugly. And then finally in March, he left, sort of. He said, okay, so that was, I guess, the breakup. But he continued to come back several nights a week throughout from then until the fall when I met someone new who is normal. Nice. But he continued to come through that. Oh no, we forgot New Orleans. Gosh.
oh,
So in May, he was in New Orleans for a conference and he'd been coming a lot at night. And of course, I wanted him to because I wanted him back, and all of that was crazy. But he came, and so I thought maybe they'd broken up. So anyway, he went to New Orleans. I flew down to meet him, and we were there 2 nights together. And the second night, phone rang like 1 a.m. or something like that. And it was on my side of the bed. I answered the phone, and number four's voice said, "Hi, who's this?" And I said, "It's Linda." She said, "May I speak to Arlen?" And I just hung up.
Because you knew it was her?
Yeah, well, who else would it be, really? No, I knew that voice. And so then the phone rang a second time, and I just picked it up and dropped it down and said to him, "You might want to check your phone." So we did, and he went out in the hallway to talk to her and told her that phone didn't ring in our room. I mean, the room. It wasn't our room, it was the room. Must have been a mistake. Linda? No Linda here. Then he came back in and he said, "I have to ask you to do something. Please do this." He said, "Will you go in the hallway?" So I'm like butt naked, right? Like, "Would you go in the hallway? She wants me to FaceTime the room to prove that there's no one here." So he's like, pulling all the suitcases, hiding all the stuff, evidence of another person. So I stepped into the closet. I cannot believe I did this. Like, it was so stupid. She called and she's like, "Come on, show me the room." So he FaceTimed the room. She made him go in the bathroom, FaceTime behind the door. My toiletries were all over the counter. I guess he just skipped those. Then we drove home. So he drove me to the airport I'd flown out of, where my vehicle was. And on the way, he was like, "Oh, she's gonna be done with me. I just know it." And I said, "No, she's not." I said, "She is playing you." I said, "You will have a ring on her finger by the end of the day." Within 6 hours of getting home, I had phone call from him saying that they were in a committed relationship, and I thought, "You were not so committed 12 hours ago."
Before, when he had been coming to your house or you had been
No.
going to his place.
Oh yeah, crazy. Anyway, and then he sent me the picture of the ring, and I was like, "Told you." So, but on the way back on the trip, I said, "So what are you going to do when she says that we can't see each other, that you can't have contact with me?" And he said, "We'll just keep doing what we're doing." So I was now the other woman to the other woman. And so we just kept doing, he kept coming to stay overnight. I bought a house that summer. He came to the house, saw the house, came for lunch one day. It was just continued like that. And I guess they did set a date for the wedding, and she found out in November that we would text back and forth and things. And she got mad at him, threatened not to marry him. But I said, "She'll marry you." And they did. And
So at this point, you're having these text conversations, or at least somehow communicating, and for a period of time still sleeping with Arlen. Then you meet somebody, and I assume that you broke off any sexual contact with Arlen at that point, but you maintained some communication.
I was in pretty hardcore therapy by then. It's generally advised to go no contact with someone who is a narcissist. And I, for whatever reason, didn't feel I could do that. So my new partner, he knows the whole story. He knows the whole story. He knows that we still have contact, and I'm very open about that. I now know we had what's called a trauma bond, where you literally become physically addicted to the chemicals that are released in the brain when you get the highs from this particular kind of relationship, the intensity, and then followed by the lows. And so you're always waiting for those, the little breadcrumbs they throw at you, and creates this thing that is called a trauma bond. It's very hard to break. And, it's a process. There's a lot of therapy involved. My therapist can be rich, very beneficial. I'm happy I've invested the time and money in that process. For me, it was very essential. And Evie has been huge support in just processing it all. And, I'm sure she's ready to be done talking about Arlen, but I'm thankful that she's helped fill in a lot of the gaps and figure out things that didn't make sense, and because none of it makes any sense. I loved him, as did Evie. Like, I loved him.
Yeah.
And now, I know it was a performance. The persona that I was in love with was just that, a persona. But I did love that person who I thought he was. And it's very hard to, if we have a chat in a text, it's hard to forget that person is not really real. It's very challenging.
I've often said that people like that, I'm not saying narcissists in general, I'm saying this type of person, they're incapable of real love. And so what they do is they watch people who, it's the mirroring thing that you talked about, is that they take on those characteristics because they think that these people, or they know that these people are actually worthy of love. And so they want to be with them. They want to know how to love, I think, but they just don't know how. And so they just have to play the role. And that's a sad thing. Well, so let's finish up the story before we get into some lessons learned and stuff, because there are a lot of lessons to talk about here. But let's finish up the story. Whatever happened to Arlen and number 4?
They're married.
So when did they get married?
December of 2021.
So 6 months ago.
But not at a small price.
What does that mean?
Because when we were all getting the text messages, and my sons could see what their dad was doing. Now, mind you, they watched him do it to me. They were 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, when he did it to me in our home. And so they were teenagers, and they're very respectful people. And so they respected his role for the most part. So then when they could see what he was doing, they finally confronted him, and they're like, Dad, you're messed up. Like, this is messed up. You can't do this to people, because they watched him bring number 4 in a room of people, and then knew he went home and slept in Linda's bed, but it was their bed. And so they were like, Dad, you can't keep doing this. And they said, we're not going to have a part of it. Like, you've got to stop, because you've got to get help. And that fueled his fire of, I'm a grown man, I can do what I want. And number 4 knew this. And she knew that if he kept on with her, his kids were going to be like, we're not going to be a part of this. And so at one day, Arlen said, I'll choose you over my children. And so my children called and said, hey, Dad, we saw your text message. We'll make it easy for you. And that's been the end of it. And a man who, if you were to look at our family, if you were to take a look from outside, I would think we were the perfect family. Now, there's lots of junk going on, but we were happy. We did have fun. My kids were respectful. They never got in trouble. They were just good kids, good relationships. We all had good relationships. No fallouts, the 5 of us. And for him to walk away from these young men is shocking, but I don't know why.
I don't even understand how that's a possibility.
It's a testament to your parenting, Evie, that your sons at 22 and 23 were able to set a boundary, based on their values that they held very dear, and to say, it doesn't matter if you're our dad, we're not okay with having this kind of person in our space. I wish I had that sense of my own values and that ability to set and protect a boundary. And it's humbling that those young men did. Humbling.
Yeah.
So, Evie, just by the way, I agree with what Linda just said. That is an amazing thing. I don't think I got this from the first episode that we did together. When did your kids cut off contact with their dad? Just last year?
March
of 2022?
2021.
Oh, 2021. Okay. So before they got married, but he definitely made that choice.
Yeah.
To be with her. Wow.
Yeah, and when they called to tell him this, and they're very respectful, they said it very calm. They said it very succinctly. They're very, upstanding, great kids. I just can't say that enough. they weren't calling chewing him out, or they just kind of said, this is kind of how it is, and we saw your text. Now, I would think that his next response would be, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean that. Oh my gosh, yeah, I did say it, but it was, and then he would try to make things better with them, and he did not. He walked away, if he walked away. Linda has been more interested and more concerned about him leaving our children than he has.
I mean, the walking away from the boys on his part is consistent with the behavior of someone with NPD, in that the boys were supply as long as they adored, respected, all of those things. And when they challenged, they too were discarded.
Do you think he is so full of himself that he just thinks those boys will come to their senses someday?
I would think he more doesn't even have a thought that they exist. I don't know.
Really? Okay.
He's so...
All right. So I have one question for each of you. And Evie, because you and I have had this not this conversation, but we've had more time to get to know each other, I'm going to ask you first to give Lori or Linda time to think about it. Because this is the question that people will ask. How could you be so easily fooled? You're a smart woman. You're not a dumb person. Yet this man played you for 25 years. I'm going to ask it bluntly. What's your excuse?
Well, I mean, I have a few, and I don't know if they could hold water, but one was that little girl that laid in that bed and said, how do you get a daddy to stay? Like, how do you make a marriage work? How do you make this work? And like she said, these couples that are married 50 years, that was what this little girl heart wanted. How can I make this marriage work 50, 60, 70, 80 years? And I'll do what it takes. And so doing what it takes was whatever it took, right? It didn't matter what it was. And so now I didn't plan that at the beginning, but that was one reason, is because I had this goal in mind. One goal. The end result is happily ever after, ever, forever after. And so that's one thing. And the other thing is, he's a really good liar. He didn't break. And I didn't know there's that kind of person. So if I tell a lie, I'm going to be like, no, like, I'm going to call the person back and go, I didn't mean that, and I know I'm going to get caught. And so when he never did that for a long time, I thought, well, he must be telling the truth, because nobody can lie and get away with it that long. And so he's straight faced. He never gives. He never apologizes. He never relents or repents or anything. And so part of it, I was really fooled. And another part is, he was telling me what I hoped was the truth. Mm-hmm. I had 3 sons, and I wanted them to have their dad. I mean, I do have a psychology degree and a master's in counseling and study family dynamics, and I know the importance of the role of a dad, and that's what I wanted. Now, the importance of the role of a dysfunctional dad, I'm not sure. Right. I didn't think he was that dysfunctional until the text messages came, Tom. Until those text messages, until the moment they arrived on my phone, I thought he was a great person, and I thought he had met Linda, and she fit him better. She suited him better. And until I saw those with my eyes, I never could have thought he was capable. It was clear that he was, and everything became clear then. But so those are my answers. I'm good and confident in what I have done. I don't know why I waited so long, but what I do know is it's my story, and it took me that long to get to the point I got to. Okay. And a day before would have been too soon. Like something in the oven, you can't take it out too soon. It won't be done. And that's...
Yeah, good for you. Okay, Linda, you've kind of, and again, I'm going to say it one more time. Thank you so much for being willing to bare your soul. I'm sure this has not been the easiest couple hours of your life. So same question though, because you were duped as bad, if not worse, maybe not for as long, but you were duped by this guy. What happened?
I believe that people change, and I believe people can change. And when he was lying and things like that, I just believed that everyone wanted to be a better person and wanted to do things better. The next day I wake up in the morning, I think today's, like Anne of Green Gables says, today's a new day with no mistakes in it yet. Usually the operative word there. And so I just had I just believed wholeheartedly that he wanted those things too. And I didn't know there were people in the world who lived double lives. I didn't know that he was one of them because there was so much to like. We had lots of really good times together, and I valued so much about the relationship as I thought it was. The other things I thought were things to work on. I don't expect perfect relationships. I thought that was stuff you just work on. I didn't know, as Evie has put it, the gravity of the depravity. I didn't know about MPD. So by the time I think, by the time things started to click, at that point, I was in so deep in a trauma bond. I was a willing participant in my own betrayal.
Wow.
Yeah, I sold my soul. I have a reputation as being pretty mouthy, pretty bold. And where that version of me went in this relationship, I have no idea. But she did not show up for me. And I wish that she had, because she would have fared much better. Because she would have said, you need to go figure out your stuff because I'm not playing these games. Instead, I gave him chance after chance. And with someone who isn't, the rules, the things that work as far as healing normal relationships do not work in a relationship with someone with MPD. They backfire. Forgiveness is simply permission to continue the behavior. And I forgave and I forgave. And I thought I was doing the right thing. Yeah. What I now know is that don't wait for the right train in the wrong station. And better yet, get out of the station, buy your own damn car, and go on a trip.
Mm-hmm.
Because, Evie's showing me that life's a trip and you should take it.
Absolutely. So now we are at the part of this show that to me is the most important part, which is what have we learned from this? You guys have both been through it, literally the same kind of gaslighting and abuse from a narcissist, a true narcissist. And there's got to be a lot of lessons learned. So, Evie, let's start with you. What have you learned, or what would you want the audience to hear from you and learn from your experience?
I think what is a big part of my heart of what I want people to know is if your spouse has cheated on you, most likely nothing you learn past that is a truth, because whatever they tell you is their version. Whatever it is, they're going to tell you their version of it, and they're not going to want to be faithful, even those that say, oh, he bared his soul. No. So anyway, I just want to encourage people who have caught their spouse having an affair that the bottom line is either you're going to make it work and you got to forget whatever all that affair entailed, or you're not going to make it work. Like, you can't do or you're going to go on for years. People go on for years. Oh, but that triggered me. Yeah, it's going to happen. So it's really, you have to make a decision. So by the time the third one came around, I had made a decision. I'm just going to roll with this, and we're going to have the best marriage. We're going to roll with it. And you really do have to forget. But I just want to say that if your spouse has had an affair, be aware, because there's a million ways to cheat. There's more than a million ways to cheat. And I don't know. I don't even suggest anybody work on it now. And before, I was like, anybody can make it work. And I'm just not there anymore. And I'm sad to deliver that news, but I think it's the reality of the situation. The damage is done. They did choose someone else. And so anyway, so my takeaway is people can lie, and there are millions of ways to do it. And if your spouse has had an affair and you need help, I would love to walk with you through it, past it.
That's great. That's harsh, but sometimes the truth hurts.
Yeah, because I was the one that held on forever and ever. Nobody could have told me that. Somebody told me that and said, you're crazy. But I just know now it's the fact. So.
Yeah. All right, Linda, let's finish this up and let's take it home. What do you want people to learn from your experience?
I think it's very important to trust your intuition, because I knew when he was lying, and my intuition was really my best friend. I don't know how I knew. I just felt it, always did. And I silenced my best friend, my intuition, and tried to convince myself of something else because I wanted to believe something else. So, lesson number 1, don't become complicit in your own betrayal. And number 2, do the work on yourself. At some point, if you haven't done it yet in your life, it's never too late. Do it. Get grounded in your values and learn how to set boundaries and do not sell your soul to make someone else's life better, easier at the expense of your own. And the third thing I would say is that your friends are not always your allies, and your adversaries are not always your enemies. And
Wow.
Evie and I were not friends at a certain point in time. I like to think we are now. I didn't expect an alliance with Evie, but I'm grateful for it. And so sometimes the support you need comes in places you never expected it, and be grateful for it when you find it.
Great advice. I absolutely love it. Well, I want to thank both of you one more time. Thank you both for being here. Evie, for a second time. Linda, thank you for bearing your soul and sharing some awkward moments with us. Wow. You see why I love that part of the show? People who've been through so much pain often have the best advice to avoid that pain. It's up to us to listen and to learn. People often tell me this show is biased because we're only hearing one side of the story, and that's normally the case, but not today. I'm so grateful to Evie for introducing me to Linda, and to Linda for sharing her side of the story. It truly brings a new perspective to the story, right? I hope you liked the show today. If you did, please take a few seconds to give us a 5-star rating on your podcast app. That really helps us spread the word about the show. Also, be sure to follow Evie on TikTok at Happily Even After. Have an amazing week, everyone. Bye.
It's a great day, I'm feeling good. Oh, the possibilities of what I could, oh, do with the world at my fingertips. My imagination brings a smile up to my lips.
Did you know you can get divorced without hiring an attorney? Let ourdivorce.com guide you through our 3-step process for a simple flat fee. Visit ourdivorce.com to learn more and get started today.